Hi, this is Roy Mitchell. I wanted to give you a brief video on these item cluster assessment models that we're going to pattern our assessments after. These assessments start with a phenomenon. You create a storyline from it, and then you get 5 or more questions coming from that phenomenon and storyline. So overall, in each assessment, you will have several phenomena and questions stemming from there. Overall, these won't be the 40, 50, 60 question assessments that are often at the end of each unit. These are going to be considerably shorter. Let me show an example of what the phenomena and storyline could look like. I'll read it for you. While researching minerals, Cheryl learned about red diamonds. She discovered that red diamonds are the most expensive minerals in the world. They can cost over $1 million per carat. The largest red diamond in the world, the Massif red diamond, was acquired in 2011 for $8 million. Cheryl wondered why some minerals are very valuable and others are not. So that's the phenomena, and you can see I attached a storyline to it with Cheryl and how she wondered about these minerals. Now, I'm not going to then answer the phenomenon. This is just going to start other questions that come from the topic of minerals. So how might one of those questions look like? Here's what might be a question that comes right after the phenomenon. Number 1, Cheryl looks up pictures of other minerals and spots a pattern. Some pictures show minerals broken along flat surfaces like this. The tendency for a mineral to break along flat surfaces is called the minerals, and you can see there are questions coming from there. So that follows that storyline that was started from the phenomenon about minerals, and I got a question from it from there. Now there was something else that was mentioned here. Item clusters should have at least 2 dimensions to each question. Here are the dimensions. We have the science and engineering practices. There are 8 of those. We have cross-cutting concepts. There are 7 of those. There are also disciplinary core ideas, which in our instance is just going to be the content. So if you have content, you're going to have at least one of the 3 dimensions. And since this is about minerals, you do have content here. But what was that second dimension, I should say? It happened to be right here, a cross-cutting concept called patterns. Let's take a look back again. Notice it says Cheryl looks up pictures of other minerals and spots a pattern. So that concept of patterns is what makes that more than just one dimension. And every single question has to have at least 2 dimensions in these common assessments. So I'll skip down to here. The science and engineering practices performances are not just mentioned like the patterns were. Remember, patterns is cross-cutting concept. But when you have a science and engineering practice, you have to be done by the test taker or simulated. I'll give you an example. In this particular test item, we're going to have the science and engineering practice of analyzing and interpreting data. So let's see where that comes in. You can see Cheryl finds that a mineral on diamond is a 10 on Mohs scale, a scale she studied in class, and then they are given the data. So it's not just a matter of mentioning the word data. When you have any of these science and engineering practices, you don't just mention them. That's something that the students do or that the students see the results of. So in this case, it is 2-dimensional, of course, because not only do you have a content for one dimension, you have this science and engineering practice, analyzing and interpreting data. Does that help? I did mention that at least one question per cluster should have at least 3 dimensions. That would be science and engineering practices, cross-cutting concepts, and the core ideas. Core ideas are easy, but let's see how we might could fit the others in there. Cheryl understands that the minerals undergo changes. Draw two models showing circumstances where a mineral can change into a rock. You may notice this is not a multiple choice question. It's going to be pretty hard to have all three dimensions in a question and it still be multiple choice. It's just going to be a challenge. What are the other dimensions here? One is stability and change. Stability and change should be a cross-cutting concept, and yes, it is. And the other was drawing two models. Let's see how that is worded. It is a science and engineering practice developed and using models. So that's how you got a science and engineering practice, how you got a cross-cutting concept, and how you also got a core idea in those three dimensions. A whole item cluster can be found at the Kentucky Science Summative Pilot, which happens to be at the directions that you have seen on these common assessments here. Well, I certainly hope that was informative and let you see some examples of how these might look. Feel free to email me at rmitchell@floydboe.net if you have any further questions, and thank you for helping.